Hello everybody and welcome back to another tutorial. This tutorial is going to be a little bit different. In the past we've mostly done Kotlin for Android applications, but today I'm going to show you actually how you can use Kotlin to build a basic website. So let's jump right into that. And this is the basic website I'm going to be showing you how to build. Basically a spot to enter an email address, and then there's going to be a page for your subscription and then a page for seeing the list of all the subscribers. So nothing too complicated here, but this is just a demo. And to build this website, we're going to use something called Cobweb, which you can see here. Cobweb is basically a framework that's built on top of HTML Compose that we can use to basically build websites using Kotlin code. So let's jump right into that. You can click here on their, this is their website. Now, if I click on Start Learning, it's going to take me here and say, hey, we don't have any documentation. Go check out our GitHub page. So let's do that. We're going to go on over to their GitHub page. And basically, this is going to be all of their source code. And then the README down below is going to actually be their documentation. So this is quite long, and we're not going to go over all of this. Basically, I'm going to show you how to set up a website. And then you can take that and expand on it and build your own projects with that. So in here, the first thing that we're going to need to do is find the Cobweb binaries and actually install them. So if you come in here and scroll down, here we go, installing the Cobweb binary. Basically, you need to come down into here and download the Cobweb binary. You can click on this grab the zip or tar file on GitHub. So click there, version 9.13, actually 0.9.13. As of the recording of this video is the latest version. If you have Windows, go ahead and click on that zip file to download the zip folder. If you have Linux, obviously you can do the tar as well if you want. Save that into your downloads folder. Once you have that downloaded, you'll see this zip file. Let's go ahead and extract all. And you can really browse and put that wherever you want to. I'm just going to put it here because I actually already have this installed. So if you look in this new directory now, you can see that we have Cobweb 0913. Inside there, you have your lib with your jar file that you need for actually running Cobweb. And then you have your bin, which has your Cobweb application that you can use to actually execute this command from the command line. Now, on that note, this bin folder here that has the path to our executables, we need to actually have that added to our path variable so that when we run a command, Windows can actually find that. So if I come into down here on this PC, go ahead and right click on that, go to properties. In here, just type environment and you can find this one, edit the system environment variables. Click on that and then click on environment variables. And once you get into there, you'll see that you've got this list of all of the different environment variables, both for your account and then also for your system. We're just going to look at the account variables right now. And specifically, the one that we care about is this path variable. So if I open that, you'll see I actually already have the Cobweb binary down here. But let's go ahead and delete that just so I can show you what the path variable does. So if I delete that, hit OK on this, OK, and then bring up a command prompt and I type in Cobweb. You can see I get Cobweb is not recognized as an internal or external command. So obviously something's not working, and the reason is we just deleted that from our path variable. So basically the way that this path variable works is whenever I bring up a command prompt and I type in a command or an executable, it's going to look in all of these different locations. And if it can find that executable in one of these locations, it'll run that. But if it doesn't, then it's going to throw back that command not found error that we got. So now if I click new again and paste that Cobweb back in, and again, this is where I put my Cobweb binary, but basically this is going to be the path to wherever you installed yours. So I click OK on that and then OK. And now if I bring up a command prompt again, you can see that it actually finds the Cobweb executable that time. So now that we have that set up, let's go ahead and make our first project here. So I'm going to go into just my temp folder. And then if I say Cobweb create, this is going to pull down a bunch of different templates that we can choose from. And basically all these templates down here are different examples that you can look at and use just to see examples of how you can use the Cobweb framework to build different types of applications. For now, I'm just going to use this app empty one. So go ahead and select that one. Now the folder here, I'm just going to name demo. And then the user visibility, basically what is the user going to see when we run this project? We're going to call it Cobweb demo. And then here is going to be your package structure. So I can just say com.example.cobwebdemo. And now here, Silk is just a bunch of different extra UI libraries that we can use. That, like it says here, it's a layer built on top of Compose for Web. I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that. And then, would you like to include support for defining server API routes? Yes, I'm going to say yes to that as well, because we're going to be defining some server API routes, just so I can show you how to work the backend as well. And then we're not going to do any markdown files here, so let's do no on that one. Would you like to initialize Git? I'm going to say no. We will go ahead and do that later. And then once you have that, you should get this little message saying success. Now consider downloading IntelliJ IDEA. And if you don't have that, you can go to that link there and download it and install that. Or you can run this out of Android Studio if you would rather do that. But now that we have this in our demo site, so basically what it's saying is once you open your project in IntelliJ Community Edition or Android Studio, you need to cd into this directory within the project, which demo is our root directory, and then site. And then if you do Cobweb run, it should go ahead and load up your website. So let's go ahead and open that in IntelliJ Community Edition. So from here, go ahead and go into open. And basically we need to go into that temp folder and then that demo. So if you look in demo, this is going to be the root of our project. So hit OK on that. And then it's going to give you a README here. Basically, it's going to tell you the same thing. To get in to the development server, just cd into site and then do Cobweb run. So let's go ahead and do that. Bring up the terminal. From here, I can say cd site and then Cobweb run. And this is going to go ahead and build our project and then launch that web server. Okay, now you can see Cobweb server development is running at HTTP localhost. So if we copy that web URL, come into a browser, and just paste that in there, this should show us, and here you go, we've got this page is intentionally left blank. So if I go back into my IntelliJ, and if I go into my project, if you look in site, you've got your, let's see, in here we've got our site, source, and then you've got a JS main and then a JVM main. So let's go ahead and open up our JS main. And you can see inside of here, we've got this whole long package structure, and then you've got your pages, and we have our index page. So this index, the root level index under the pages directory, is going to be your home page for your website. And you can see here, basically, we have a box with a text that says this page is intentionally left blank. If I change that to something else, like maybe why is this page left blank? Now, without me even pushing anything, it's going to automatically build this and then relaunch the server so that I can see that without having to compile anything manually. You can see I get a building up at the top here. And then it changes to why is this page left blank? Now that we have that working, there's actually one more piece of software that we're going to download and run before we get into actually building our website here. And if you look back in this package, you'll see we've got our JS main package, and JS stands for JavaScript. So that's basically going to be all of our front end of our web page. So any page that the user can see, the code for that is going to go in here. And then the JVM main, that's going to be the back end of our server. So that's going to be actually what's going to be interacting with our database and sending all of that to the front end. So to do that, we're going to actually need to host a database. And the database that we're going to use here is going to be something called MongoDB. So basically, this is a NoSQL database used for large amounts of data, and it's pretty helpful and easy to use for big data, but we can use it here as well. So you need to go to mongodb.com, try download, and then we need to download this MongoDB community server. So let's go ahead and select a package. We'll just pick the current package on Windows 64, and then a Microsoft installer will be fine. Go ahead and download that, and that's going to take a minute to download. Let's go ahead and open those, and we're going to run this first one here. We're going to run the MongoDB Windows MSI, and that's going to install the server for us. So next, we're just going to do a basic installation here. Complete is fine. That is fine. I'm just going to hit next on all of these. Okay, once that's installed, go ahead and click on Open. Now we can basically connect to our local database running on that MongoDB server that we just installed, or we can actually connect to a remote database if we're running it in the cloud with MongoDB Atlas, or if we have it running on our own server somewhere. But for now, we're just going to do MongoDB localhost 27017. So click connect to that, and this is going to bring you into your localhost. Let's go ahead and make a new database here, and we're going to name this one Cobweb demo. And our collection name, because again, on our website, we're basically collecting emails for a subscriber list. I'm just going to call this subscribers, create database. And now as we add any data inside of our Android application, we should be able to see it actually within the MongoDB Compass application as well. So let's go back to IntelliJ. And while we're here, let's go ahead and actually start setting up our project. And the first thing that we're going to need to do, if you just hit Shift twice, it'll bring up your search menu. Let's find our versions catalog, which is going to be in a file called libversions.toml, T-O-M-L. And in here, you're going to see this is going to have all of the basic versions that we need for running Cobweb and Kotlin and all of that stuff. But we're actually going to need to add a couple here for MongoDB and coroutines and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and do that. Down here, I'm going to add one for what's called serialization, and that's basically, let's see, serialization, and that's basically whenever we're going to say 1.4.0 on that one. And serialization is basically whenever we're sending data, right? If we have an object in Kotlin, we can't send that object in a Kotlin class. We have to serialize that data into bytes and then send it off to our database. And then when we retrieve it from our database, we also don't retrieve that in a Kotlin object. We retrieve that in a byte stream, and then we're going to deserialize that and convert it into our Kotlin object. So that's what serialization is for. And we're going to just use 1.4.0 for the version for that one. And then MongoDB Kotlin, and this is going to be version 4.10.1. And then after that, basically what we need to do is add two more modules down here for these two, and then I believe one plugin for serialization as well. So to add a module, let's just go ahead and copy this bottom module here, paste it down here, and let's change that name. And we're going to say Kotlin X serialization JSON. And then our module name is no longer going to be this. So let's go ahead and replace that with what it needs to be as well, which is org.jetbrains.kotlinx and then colon Kotlin X dash serialization dash JSON. And now our version is going to be this. It's going to be the serialization version string that we just added up here. So let's replace that. And then down here, let's copy this one more time. And here, instead of Kotlin X serialization, this is going to be our MongoDB version. So down here for our module, I'm going to name this MongoDB Kotlin driver. And then our module, let's get rid of all of that. And we can say org.mongodb colon MongoDB driver Kotlin coroutine. And then this version is going to be this MongoDB Kotlin version that we have above. So paste that down there. And then we have one plugin that we need to actually add as well. So copy this bottom line, paste it. Let's rename that. And we're going to call this Kotlin serialization. And then the ID is going to be org JetBrains Kotlin. And instead of multi-platform here, I'm going to say plugin dot serialization. And then my ref, my version ref is going to be Kotlin for that one as well. So with all of that set up, now we need to come into our build.gradle within our site package, which is going to be this one here. And we're going to need to actually add in here another alias, which is that plugin that we just added. So libs.plugins.kotlin.serialization. And it's not going to find that until after we do a sync, so don't worry about that right now. And down below as well, you'll see down here, because this is a Kotlin multi-platform project, we've got our source sets and we've got our dependencies for the common main, for JS main, and then for JVM main as well. And actually over here, you can see I only have a JS main and a JVM main. I don't even have a common main right now, but we can fix that and make one, because we're going to have some common code that we're going to share between JS main and JVM main. But for now, let's go ahead and just add the implementations and the dependencies that we need down here. So implementation libs dot, this is going to be Kotlin X dot serialization dot JSON. And again, this is going to show up red until after we go ahead and do a sync. So we've got that one, and then we've got core, let's see, HTML core, Cobweb, Silk. This should be good. We're not going to use Markdown. I'm just going to delete that from here. And then down here, we've got our Cobweb API, but because, like I said, the JVM main is going to be our backend, and that's what's going to be communicating with our actual MongoDB database, we need to add the dependency for MongoDB down here as well. So implementation libs.mongodb.kotlin.driver. And then with all of those in place, let's go ahead and click sync now on that. And there we go. Now all of our dependencies are coming up good, and we should be able to actually start building this program. So now with that, all of the dependencies set up and running, we can actually start writing some Kotlin code. So the first thing that I'm going to do is actually copy this JVM main package. So copy that, come up to my source folder, paste that down here, and instead of JVM main, I'm going to call this common main now. And now inside of common main, let's go ahead and delete that README and also this API package. We're not going to have any common API packages, but we are going to have a common model that we're going to share between the two of them, a data model. And that's going to be essentially our subscriber model, which is just going to hold a email and then the date that they subscribed. So to do that, we're going to make a new class here. And this is actually going to be a data class. And we're going to say subscriber. And now within here, I'm going to say val date. And this is going to be a long. And by default, I'm just going to have this set to 0. And then also I'm going to have the email. So val email. And this is just going to be a string by default set to empty. There's one more actual field that we're going to need here, and that's going to be our ID field. And that's because MongoDB is going to need that ID field. So I want to say val underscore ID is of type string. And by default, we're just going to have that equal to an empty string. And then because we need to actually serialize this data to send it back to Mongo, back and forth between MongoDB and then our backend server, basically we need to mark this class with the serializable annotation. And that should be everything we need there. Now let's go into our JVM main and see what we need down here. So we already have this API package. But also under here, I'm going to add one more package, and I'm just going to call this my data package. Within my data package, I'm going to have a MongoDB interface. So down here, we're going to rename this. Let's see. We're going to have a Kotlin class. not Java class. Where is it? Kotlin class or file. This is going to be an interface, and I'm going to name this MongoDB. Now, inside of MongoDB, basically, we need to define all the functions that we're going to need here. And like I showed you earlier, basically, we're going to have a function to submit a new email subscriber, and then a function to grab all of them. So suspend fun, we're going to say get all subscribers. And this is going to return a list of subscriber. And then after that, we're going to say suspend fun add subscriber. And basically, this will take a subscriber in and will return a Boolean, which is true or false based on whether it was successful or not. And this is going to be everything we need inside of our interface. Now we need to actually implement that interface. So new Kotlin class or file, and this is going to be a class. And I'm going to call this MongoDB implementation. So inside of this MongoDB implementation, first things first, we need to inherit from our interface. So MongoDB. And once you do that, you're going to get this error here. Basically, we need to implement our members. So we've got these two classes that we need to fill out. But before we can actually get these, before we can define what these look like, we need to actually initialize our MongoDB database. So up here, let's have a new function, fun. We're going to call this initialize Mongo. And this is going to take context, init. This is going to be a init API context. And now within here, let's go ahead and initialize our Mongo database. And the way that we do that is we can say system.setProperty. And then inside here, basically we need to pass in the mapping service and then also the serialization class mapping type service. So let's go ahead and do that. So we could say org.light, let's see, sorry, org.lightout.mongo.test.mapping.service. And then after that, we've got one more we need to hand in here, and this is going to be org.lightout.kmongo.serialization class mapping type service. Okay, now with that in place, I can say context.data.add, and we're going to add a MongoDB implementation. And we need to import that add function. Basically, this is saying it doesn't have a Basically, this error here is saying, hey, you don't have a companion object, so you can't pass this. And the reason is essentially we need to initialize that class here. And there you go. You've got context, data, add, MongoDB implementation. Now, inside of here, we can say private val client is equal to Mongo client dot create. This is going to create a local client for us. And then in here, we could say private val database is going to be equal to client dot get database. And then we need to hand it essentially our database name, which if you'll remember is Cobweb demo. So as a string, we just said Cobweb demo. And then after that, we need to get any collections that we might have. So here we have our database, Cobweb demo, and then we have our collection, which is subscribers. So let's go ahead and initialize that one too. And actually, I'm just gonna rename that to subscriber instead. So create collection, subscribers. I'm going to actually go ahead and delete this one, drop collection. Okay, there we go. So I've got my subscriber collection. Now inside of here, let's do private val subscriber collection is going to be equal to our database dot get collection of type subscriber. And this, we have to pass the name here, so we're going to say subscriber. So this will be our collection with all of our subscriber documents in it. And now we just have these two functions to define down here, which should be fairly easy. So to get all subscribers, we can just say return subscriber collection dot find, and then inside of here, all we have to do is leave that blank because we want to find everything, and then we need to convert that to a list because up here we're returning a list of type subscriber. And that should be all we need there. Let's go ahead and import that extension function. Now for add subscriber, it's going to be fairly similar, a one-line function here as well. So we can say return subscriber collection dot insert one, and then this is going to be subscriber. We're going to say dot was acknowledged, and there we go. Now we have our MongoDB functions to get all the subscribers and then to add the subscribers. But these functions are sitting in our JVM main, which means they're going to be running in our backend, and we need to know how to trigger these functions. So to do that, to trigger these functions from our JS main, basically we need to define some API endpoints within our JVM main, and then we can call those API endpoints from within functions in our JS main. So under the API folder down in JVM main, let's do new. We're going to do a new Kotlin class or file. And I'm just going to call this one subscribers. And this is actually going to be just a file because it's just going to be a series of functions here. So the first one, we can say suspend fun add subscriber. This is going to take in a context of API context. And we also need to define that this is an API route. So to do that, we can add this API annotation above it. And then to override our route, we can say route override, and we set this equal to whatever we want. Here, I'm just going to say add subscriber. And with that, basically, when I now access my website with this add subscriber URL, that is going to trigger this function. So that's how our JS main can call these JVM main functions. That's how our JS main can call these JVM main functions. So to do that, in here, we actually now need to define what happens when we call this add subscriber function. And basically what we want to happen is we want to call this function here inside of our MongoDB implementation. So to do that, we're just going to we'll add a try catch block. We're going to catch any exception. And whoops, not an executable, catch any exception. And if there is any exception, then we're just going to say context dot response set body text JSON dot encode to string, and then we can hand it that exception. So that's for if we have the error, but if this actually works, basically we want to get the subscriber that they're passing in. We need to decode it from, we need to get the subscriber that we're passing in from the JS main. We need to encode that into a string and then pass it to the same context. So to do that in here, I can say val subscriber is equal to context dot request dot body. And then in here, we're going to say dot decode to string. And then we say let JSON dot decode from string. And then this is going to be subscriber. That's it in, which is, again, which is the string coming in from our let function. Close that bracket. Let's go ahead and import all of these. Let's see this it. We need to import this extension function. And there we go. Now that we have that subscriber coming in, we need to actually make a new subscriber because we're going to need to define, if you'll remember, in that subscriber, we have our date, our email, and then we also have our ID. And our date and our email we can set easily within JS main, but our ID, we're actually going to auto-generate that one. So back here, I'm going to say val new subscriber is going to be equal to subscriber, and we're going to say dot copy, and then we're going to essentially, we want the date and the email to be the same, but we want the ID to be different. So ID equals object ID generator, this one here, dot generate dot toString. And that's going to give us a basically another subscriber object with everything the same except with an auto-generated ID that we can then use to have a unique ID for our Mongo database. And then after that, I could say val response body is going to be equal to JSON dot encode to string. And here we're going to say new subscriber dot let. And then with this it coming in, we're going to say context dot data dot get value. And then here we need to specify that this is a MongoDB implementation. So MongoDB implementation. And then from here, we can actually call our function inside of our MongoDB. So we could say dot add subscriber, and then we pass in an it, which is, again, that it coming in from this let statement, which is our new subscriber. So let's go ahead and import these extension functions that we need. And there we go. Now, basically, all we need to do here, we've got that response body. We need to say context dot response dot set body text response body. And now this add subscriber function should be totally done. Let's make one more function in here for getting all subscribers. So this is going to be the same thing, suspend fun get all subscribers. And then because again this is an API route, we're going to need the API context. Whoops, not there. And then inside of here, we're going to do a try catch. Let's catch in exception E. And inside of here, let's go ahead and let's see, context dot response dot set body text. And here we need to set this to a JSON dot encode to string. But we're going to have a problem. And our problem is this. Before we had this subscriber that we can serialize pretty easily because this is all basic types. But now when we're talking about all of them, we have no longer, I'll show you here, we no longer have just a subscriber, but we have a list of subscribers coming back. So we need to define how to serialize a list of subscribers. So to do that, let's come back up to our model class. I'm going to make a new Kotlin class or file in here. And this new Kotlin class or file, I'm going to call API response. And this API response, actually, because this is a list, let's go ahead and rename that. And let's call that API list response. So I'm going to rename file API list response. And then in here, we need to mark this as serializable, but we'll get to that in 1 second. Basically, instead of a class, this is going to need to actually be a sealed class, and we're going to use this for the response that we get back from our API. So we're going to have 3 different objects in here. The first one is going to be loading. This is going to be of type API list response. The second one is going to be that's an object loading. This one's going to be a data class, and this is going to be success. And this is going to take in one piece of data, which is going to be a list of subscribers. And then this also is going to extend API list response. And then down here, we're going to have one more data class, and this is going to be error. So data class error, and this is going to be, it's going to have data val message, which is going to be of type string. And again, this is going to be an API list response. Now you'll notice we have lots of errors here. One, it's because I spelled sealed wrong. So let's go ahead and delete that. And now everything's good to go. But we basically need to mark all of these as serializable. So serializable, let's go ahead and copy that for all of these. And then after everything's marked serializable, we need to give each a serial name. So add serial name, and this top one is going to be loading. Let's go ahead and copy that. This second one is going to be success, and then the third one is just going to be error. And now we need to actually mark this whole class as serializable. But with that being said, we actually need to, so this is basically our response that we can pass back. But when we have a list of these objects, we need to define the serialization strategy for that list. So down here, I can say object list response serializer. And this is gonna extend JSON content polymorphic serializer. And this is going to be of type API list response, which is this sealed class that we just created. And then in here, we're going to need to pass in an API list response class. Okay, now that that's done, we need to override our select deserializer. So let's see, element JSON, we don't need any of this part. We can just say is equal to when, and then in here, let's get rid of this not yet implemented when, and we can say data in element.json object, and data is basically this field here. So whenever our object has this field data, then we need to use this deserialization strategy, which is going to be API list response dot success dot serializer, and then whenever we have a message in our element.json object, which again here we have our error. Here's our message inside of our error. So whenever we have that message, we know this is an error, so we can say API list response dot error dot serializer. And then finally, we can say else. If it doesn't have a message or data, then this must be loading. So we can say API list response dot loading dot serializer. And now that we have that, basically we need to take this object, and up above where we're serializing it, we just need to define that that's the serializer that we're using. Okay, now that we have all of that, let's go back to our subscribers, and we can finish up this get all subscribers function here. So we've got this down here, set body JSON encode to string. Now, what do we need to encode to string? Well, it's this API list response dot error. And in there, we're just going to say our message is equal to our e dot message dot to string. And then above, for what we're actually trying, and when we don't have an error, we need to read in all the users. So we could say val my users is equal to context dot data dot get value. And again, this context is this API context. So our context get value, which is going to be of type MongoDB implementation, dot get all subscribers, because again, from here, when we're actually getting that implementation of our Mongo database, we can actually call the functions inside of that Mongo database. So get all subscribers, and now we have them all in my users. All we need to do is basically encode them to a string and pass them back to JS main who's going to be calling this function. So to do that, I can say context.response.setBodyText. And in here, we're going to pass that as a JSON.encode to string. And this is going to be an API list response dot success. And in there, we're going to have our data, and we're going to set the data equal to my users. So that should be everything that we need for the JVM main. Now, with that in place, let's come on up to our JS main. We're done with the JVM main. We can close out of that. We're done with the common main. And let me just close some of these files that we don't need right now. I'm going to close most of those. So now let's come into JS main down here into Cobweb demo. Before we do anything, let's make another package up here. I'm going to call this one, we'll just call it data. And then inside of here, I'm going to have a new Kotlin class or file. And this is going to be a file called API calls. And in here, in our JS main and our API calls function, this is where we can actually call those API endpoints that we created. So to do that, all we need to do is say suspend fun add subscriber. And this is going to take a subscriber of type subscriber and pass back a string. And then down here, all we need to do is say return window dot API dot try post. And then we better import that API. Now down here inside of this try post, I could say API path is equal to, and here, this API path needs to match this right here, this route override. So I'm going to copy that and paste it into our API path. And then down here, we can say body is equal to JSON.encode to string. And this is going to be a subscriber dot encode to byte array. And now here I can simply say we can decode that back to a string so that we can return it. I can say decode to string dot to string. And then here we have JSON.encode to string. Let's go ahead and import that. And now we should be good to go with our add subscriber function. Let's go ahead and do our get all subscriber function. So this is going to be a suspend function, and it's going to be get all subscribers. And in here, I'm actually going to pass in two different lambdas here that we can define from the composable that's calling it. And I'm going to say on success, and this on success is going to be an API list response, which is going to pass back a unit. And then finally, we're going to have on error. And this is just going to be, whoops, this is just going to be an exception lambda. And that way we can basically kick the can down the road and we don't need to define what this does on success and error inside of this function. All we need to do is call the JVM main function. So from here, I could say try, and then catch, we'll catch any exception here. And if there's an exception down here, all we're going to do is print line E, and then on, we're going to call our on error function that we have and pass it E as well. And I know obviously this maybe is not the best exception handling here. We could do a little more there, but I'm not going to. This is just a demo. If you're building anything for productions, obviously you want to do a little more error handling than that. And then inside of this try block, we can say val result is equal to window.api.tryGet. And then inside of that try get, I could say API path is equal to, and again, this is that string. So here, oh, actually, this get all subscribers. We need to actually define our API route for that. So we weren't quite done with that. We're going to say get all subscribers. And now that we've got that, copy that string, come back to here, and then that is going to be our API path for the get all subscribers. Now, from that, we can decode to string, and then I can say if our result is not equal to null, meaning if we got something back, we can say on success, and we can say JSON.decode from string result. And then after that, we can say else, meaning else if it is equal to null, then I can say on error, and we can call an exception here, exception, and we'll be super vague, something went wrong. Okay, now that we have these two functions, we should be able to use them to basically make our database calls using our API endpoints that we have in our JVM main from our actual composables themselves. So before we do that, let's go ahead and make one more package up here for our navigation, because we're going to have two different screens here, one for the home page and then one for the list of all the subscribers. And basically in here, we're going to say new Kotlin class or file, and this is going to be a class. I'm going to call this screen, and then this is going to be a sealed class. Now inside of here, I'm going to have two pages. One is object home page, which is going to extend screen because this is a sealed class, and we're going to say route is equal to basically just that, and then we need to actually define that as a parameter up here. So screen val route is going to be of type string. So there we go. And then down here, man, I just keep spelling sealed wrong. Down here, we'll have one more object, and this is going to be subscriber list page. And this is also going to implement screen, and we're going to say route is equal to / subscribers. Okay, now that we have those screens there, we should be able to navigate between our screens. So now we just need to start defining some composables so that we can put our website online. So in components, I'm gonna pretty much make one new class in here, or not a new class, a new Kotlin class rather, Kotlin file rather, and this is just gonna be our header layout. So let's go in here, and I can say add composable, and down here I can say fun header layout, and we just need to define what we want our header to look like. So basically, we're going to want our page context. So I'm going to pass in our page context as a parameter there. I'm also going to pass in a composable lambda. So we're going to say content at composable, and this is just going to be a lambda that passes back a unit. And because this is just going to be our header, we're going to want to use that on every page. So we'll call this header, and then we'll put anything that we want on the actual page inside of our lambda block here. So now let's just start by making a box, and inside of this box, we can say modifier is equal to modifier.fill max size, and import that. Now, actually, inside of this box, we're going to have a row, and that's just going to list our two pages that we're going to want to navigate to. So I can say row, and then just like in Android Compose, in HTML Compose or Cobweb Compose, which is built on top of HTML Compose, we have boxes, headers, or we have boxes, modifiers, rows. Pretty much anything that you would expect in the Android Compose you can use here as well. And I can say row modifier is equal to modifier, and then dot background. Let's go background. We can say colors dot navy. Just that'll give us like a dark navy blue. And then after that, let's give it some padding, and we'll say 20 pixels. After that, we could say dot fill max width, just so it stretches across the entire page, because this is the header, so we want it to do that. And I'm going to say height is equal to 150 pixels. And one thing to note here that's slightly different than Jetpack Compose for Android is in Android, these modifiers, this order is going to matter quite a bit. So if you put the padding at the top, it's going to apply the padding and then whatever's beneath it. But so here, if I have this padding either at the top or the bottom or the middle, it doesn't matter. It's going to apply all of these the same way, no matter what. So the order doesn't actually matter for the Cobweb compose here. And then now, after that, we are going to go ahead and say our vertical alignment is going to be equal to alignment.center vertically, and our horizontal arrangement is going to be equal to arrangement.start, and that's just going to do it at the top of our page, the left side of our page, and it's going to put all the content in the middle of this header. And now, inside of this row, we're just going to have a span text, which is just a basic text field. Inside of the span text, I can say text equals home page. We can say modifier is equal to a modifier dot color, and then our color can be colors dot white, because white will show up pretty good on a dark navy background. We can say dot cursor to define what our cursor is going to look like when we hover over this. And I'm going to say cursor dot pointer because I want this to be a link. Dot margin. Let's give this a little bit of a margin here. And I can say maybe 40 pixels. And another thing you'll notice here, we're using px for pixels, not dp like we would in Android Jetpack Compose. So it is a little bit different. And then I can say font size. And this font size is going to be 24 pixels. And then we'll define an on-click. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to navigate back using our page context that we have here. So we can say context dot router dot navigate to, and then in here we're just going to say screen, and make sure to do this basically the screen in the navigation package that we defined. Don't use this org w3c.dom. We don't want that one. So screen.homepage.route, and that'll take us back to our homepage. And then let's copy that span text and come down here, give it one more, and instead of homepage up here, I'm going to change this to subscriber list. And down here, colors white. We can leave all of this the same, except this homepage.route needs to actually change to subscriber list page.route. And we have everything done there. The only thing we have left for our header is we have to define where the content goes. So to do that, come down. Let's come down below this row, and we can make a column down here. Let's pass in a few parameters here. I can say modifier is equal to a modifier dot fill max size, and then we're going to put a margin on the top of 150 pixels. And the reason that we're doing 150 is basically we want content to appear under our header, which you can see the height of our header is 150 pixels as well. So we just want that to match. And then down inside of this column, I can say content. We can call our content lambda. And the only thing, let's just add some arrangement here. So I can say vertical arrangement equals arrangement dot center. And then I can say horizontal alignment equals center horizontally. So now this header actually should be totally done. So if I come back to my home page, which is going to be under pages index, so the index that's marked page, this is going to be my home page. If I were to come up here and let's just call that header, let's get rid of this to-do item, and we can say val context rather is going to be equal to remember page context. And then let's just have a scope for calling coroutines. Scope is going to be equal to remember coroutine scope. Now down here, we can basically call our header, nope, not that, our header layout function. and we have to pass in our context. We can say context is equal to context, and then we have to pass in our composable lambda as well, our content lambda. And to do that, let's just cut this data and stick it now inside of that header. Now, if we come back to our website and load this, you'll see that we actually get a nice header up top with the span text that we added. And here you go, these are links. So if we click the first one, it's going to take us back home, which is where we are right now. And if we click the second one, it's going to take us to an error 404 because while we have that route defined, we haven't actually defined that page yet. So we need to do that. But before we do that, let's go ahead and fill out this home page. So let's delete this box. We don't really want that anymore. That was just the default one that came with it. And inside of this header layout, I'm going to have a column. And then inside of this column, whoops, let's import that. Let's pass in a few parameters. So modifier is equal to a modifier.fillMaxSize. And then I can say horizontal alignment is equal to center horizontally. So this one, center horizontally. We can say vertical arrangement is equal to top. And basically that's going to put it in the middle of the screen and at the top. And now within this column scope, let's go ahead and make another span text. And then inside of this, we're going to say the text is equal to subscribe to our newsletter. And then I can say modifier is equal to a modifier where we can change our font size to something a little bigger, so maybe 30 pixels. And then we can also set a margin on that. We can say margin, let's just say 20 pixels all the way around. And with that set up, we're going to actually put a row beneath that with an input, and then also with our button to actually add our email list to our database. So to do that, let's add a row. We'll hand in a few parameters there. We can say modifier is equal to, actually, we maybe don't even want a modifier here. We can just say vertical alignment is equal to alignment dot center vertically, and then horizontal arrangement is going to be equal to arrangement dot center, and that'll just put it right in the middle. Now inside of this row, we're going to have our button and then also an input field. So to do an input field in this, we can just say input, and then inside of here, we can say type is equal to input type dot text, because we're going to be reading an email, which is going to come in as text. And then our attributes is going to be equal to a modifier. And let's see, basically, yeah, we're going to be equal to a modifier. And this modifier, we need to define our ID. So we can say our ID is going to be an email input field. So I'll just call it email input. After email input, we can say our width is going to be 320 pixels. Height, let's just say 50 pixels. And then I can say color is going to be equal to colors dot navy, because we already have kind of a navy blue theme going. We could say background color. So background color is going to be equal to colors dot light gray dot padding, and for the padding here, we'll just say 24 pixels. And then I could say font size. Let's just make it a little more readable at 24 pixels as well. And then border radius. This is what's going to kind of round the edges of it, so it's not a square or rectangular box with 90-degree corners. So I could say border radius, maybe 100 pixels should give it a nice kind of a round look, I can say dot margin. And here we can say right is equal to 50 dot pixels, which is going to give it 50 pixels margin on the right because we're going to have an input field and then a button right next to that. So we're going to want a little bit of space in between the two just so they look okay. Let's just delete the outline from that. So I could say outline width equals 0 dot pixels. And then I can say dot border. And in here, I can say width again is equal to 0 dot pixels. And that way we won't have that ugly looking border around it. And then down here, finally, this is our attributes field. So if I pass it a modifier, I have to actually convert this to attributes. And to do that, I just run this to attributes modifier, and then inside here, I can add any additional modifiers that I want to add. So, or additional attributes rather that I want to add. So here, I'm going to add a placeholder for this. And my placeholder is going to be just enter your email. Okay, so now we have that input. Let's go ahead and load our page and see how that looks. So there we go. Subscribe to our newsletter and then enter your email. So this alignment is maybe slightly off. We'll fix that in a little bit. Let's come back to our project here. And we've got our input. We want to actually add a button after that input as well. So to do that, let's come down here and just add a button. And then in the parameters of this button, I can say attributes is going to be equal to a modifier dot on click. And then inside this on click, we need to define what happens when we actually click this button. We will come back to that in a second. Right now, let's just leave that open. So I can say dot height is going to be 54 dot pixels, and then dot background color is going to be colors dot navy. And then we could say dot border radius is going to be 100 pixels. And then dot padding is going to be, we can just say, instead of doing padding all around, we can just say left right is going to be equal to 50 pixels. And then I could say dot cursor, and we're going to say cursor dot pointer so that it gives us that little pointer when you hover over that with the mouse, because this is a button to click. And then we can call finally to attributes. And there we go. We just need to come back and define that on click listener. But before we do that, let's come down in here and add another span text down here. So span text. And basically this span text is going to be the text of the button. So we can say modifier equal to modifier. And then inside here, dot font size, 18 pixels should look about right. And then I can say dot font weight. We'll say font weight dot, let's see, font weight dot medium. And then we can say color is going to be colors dot white, because again, white will show up pretty well on a navy blue backdrop. And then I could say text is equal to subscribe. Okay, let's just go back to our web page and see how that looks. Okay, so we've got our text field and then we've got our subscribe. And actually, this is a little offset. You'll notice we have a scroll bar on the bottom and I can scroll over here. So I messed something up on our header. We'll have to go back and fix that. But for now, let's look at this enter your email and see how it is that we can call our function to trigger our API endpoint and actually insert that email into our database. So inside of this button on click, what we're going to do is we're going to say, so val email, which is going to be our email string that we want to input, is going to be equal to document dot get element by ID, and then this is going to be our email input, which this ID is going to match this input field right here. And then basically down here, we're going to cast that to an HTML element as HTML input element. And then we can say dot value. Probably have to import this document. Okay, now that we have that email, basically this is going to read in that string from here, from this input field. So we need to validate that that's a legitimate email address. And to do that, basically we can just make a function down below and pass a regex. So I can just make a function down here, fun, validate email. This is going to take a email parameter, which is a string, and it's going to pass back a Boolean, which will be true if it's a legitimate email and false if it's not. So basically I can say val regex is equal to, and I'm just going to copy in this regular expression that ChatGPT gave me. And it says, here's a regular expression for verifying this is a legitimate email address. Basically, you have numbers, you have letters, numbers, and then a few symbols with an @ sign, followed by more letters and numbers with a dot, and then more letters and numbers. So, right, this should be something at something.com or dot something. And now all we need to do is return regex dot to regex dot matches email. So we can use this now to validate if our email is legitimate or not. To do that, right after here, we're going to say if validate email, then we're going to scope.launch because we need to launch our API function, our API call here, which adds subscriber, which you'll remember is a suspending function. So we need to run that from a coroutine. So back in our index page, we can say scope.launch. And then inside of here, we can say add subscriber. And subscriber is going to be equal to email, is equal to email, and then date is equal to date dot now dot too long. Go ahead and import that date. Now let's go back to our web page and see how that looks. So let's just try test at test.com, subscribe. And now if we come back to our MongoDB compass, come down into subscriber and hit this refresh, you can see that something has gone wrong. Okay, so I think I found actually two problems here. First of all, we have this initialize Mongo, and we need to annotate that with init API. If we don't annotate it with that, then it's not going to actually ever initialize our Mongo database. So we definitely need to do that. And that fixes our database problem. And then the other problem is in this header layout, at the bottom we have this column and we have a margin set to 150. Well, this is meant to be offsetting the header size or the header height, which is 150 pixels. So if we want to offset the height, then we only want actually the top margin to be 150. So now if we go back to our website and let this build and load. So here we go. This is actually showing up in the middle now, and we don't have that side scroll with the white blank area. So if I try 123 at test.com, and if I hit subscribe on that, now if I come back to our Cobweb demo.subscriber table inside of our database and hit refresh, you can see I have 123 at test.com. So again, we can put whatever we want here, email2 at gmail.com. subscribe, and they're pretty much going to show up here. So that's working. We're actually inserting things into our MongoDB using our endpoint that we created inside of that JVM main. But now we have that other endpoint that we want to use as well, and that's for getting a list of all of our subscribers. So to do that, you can see we've got this pages, and we have this one index page, and in here you have your home page composable. But if we want to make another page, let's go ahead and make another directory in here, and we can call this directory, let's go ahead and call it just subscribers, because we want this directory to match our screen route here, subscribers. So now if I come in subscribers and do new Kotlin class or file, and I name this index and make this a file, just like the index here matches our homepage route, so this index is going to match our subscribers page route. So to make that happen, we need to annotate this with @page, @composable, and then inside here, we basically need to make our subscribers list composable. So I can say fun subscribers list page. And now inside of here, I could say val context equals remember page context. And then after that, we could go ahead and just do our header layout, which is going to look like we did on the other page. So header layout, and then in that the lambda, which is where our content is going to go, and then we can say context is equal to our context variable that we just made. Now if we come back to our page and refresh that, so we have this home page, and if I click on subscriber list, you can see it takes us to that new page that we just created. So basically we need to populate that page with data. So to do that, let's come in here and make a column. We'll hand in a few parameters there as well. We can say modifiers equal to modifier dot 40, or sorry, we're going to say dot margin. And for that margin, let's hand it 40 pixels. And then I'm going to say fill max height. And then after that, I'm going to say vertical arrangement equals arrangement, let's see, arrangement dot top. You know what? We actually don't need a fill max height. Let's just take that off entirely. Let's do fill max width instead. Okay. Now that we have that down here, basically we just need to print out our response. So we can say when response, but of course we don't have a response yet. So we need to actually define a response variable that we get from our API call. So I can say when response by, or sorry, not when response, this is val response by remember. And this is going to be a mutable state of, where is it? Mutable state of API list response. And then in here, we're going to say API list response dot loading. We're just going to initialize it to loading in the beginning. And let's go ahead and import mutable state of, import the getters and setters as well. And then we should be good there. Now we have this when response that we need to define down here. And basically in here, we only really have two things that we care about. We can say is API list response dot success. And if it's a success, then we want to run that code. Else, we want to just print line nothing to display. And in here, whoops, I need an arrow there. And then inside of my success, basically all I'm going to do is say API, let's see, I can say response.data dot for each. And then this is going to give me a error, of course, so we need to cast that as a response.success. So once we have that, we have this it that we're passing in, so let's name that subscriber. And down here, we could say span text And inside here, text is equal to subscriber.email. And then after that, I can say modifier is equal to modifier dot font size 24 pixels. And let's just give that a bit of margin as well. We could say margin 12 pixels. Okay, now that I've got that, the only thing that we have left to do is actually make the call to get that response. And to do that, I'm just going to put that in a launched effect block up here. And I'm just going to end unit. So basically, anytime anything changes, we're going to call this launched effect block and call that that API endpoint to get all of our users or all of our subscribers from our database. So to do that, I can just call get all subscribers, and then in here I can say on success. And again, we have to define both of these functions here. On error is going to be equal to this, and we're just going to print line error, and then I'm going to say response is equal to API list response dot error. And in here, I'm going to say it dot message dot toString. And let's see. Oh, we better change that to a var so that we can actually modify that. And then that's really all the error handling that I'm going to do. And now down here for on success, I'm going to say if it, meaning that API list response, is API list response dot success. Then inside of here, I could just say response is equal to it. And let's decrease the indent on that a little bit. Now we should be totally good to go. Let's go ahead and launch this and see what happens. Okay, well, there we go. Oh, we did put it vertically right in the middle. I don't like that. I meant to put that at the top. Let's go look at that and see what I did here. So I said, we've got this column. Oh, you know what? In our header layout, I think we centered everything horizontally. Yeah, we might not necessarily want to put that there. Maybe arrangement top might be better. But either way, let's just come back here to our pages in our subscribers index. Here we can say instead of fill max width, let's just do fill max height. And then that way it'll put it right in the middle. And obviously this is not how you would want to do it, but this is just, again, a demo to show how you can do it. So let's build that again. And there we go. We've got both emails listed there. Now, if we come back here and add a new email at Yahoo. Does anybody still use yahoo.com? Then if we come over to our subscriber list, we have this new email at yahoo.com, and you can see that it's still populating in the MongoDB as well. So there we go. That's a really low level explanation of how you can build a database again, or rather how you can build a website using Kotlin and then Cobweb. And again, if you are interested in learning more about this, I definitely encourage you to check out this README on their GitHub page. It's quite a long documentation here, and this will offer plenty of different examples and explanations of how to use Cobweb, as well as looking at, if you remember, when we ran the Cobweb create command, and it gave us all of the different options for the templates that we can run here. So if I do Cobweb create, and you'll remember it gave us 6 or 7 different options. Go ahead and look through all of those and just see the different examples and the way that they're using the code, and that'll definitely help you. That'll shed a little bit light on how to do this as well. Now, if you found this video helpful and you want to see more videos on Kotlin and Cobweb web design, then leave a comment down below letting us know. And if you find it not helpful, then leave a comment down below letting us know as well, and we can stick to Android in the future. But anyway, I hope you found this video helpful. Definitely subscribe to our channel and like it if you've benefited from this, and then we will see you in the next video.